plans in motion to run for that Senate seat.
Right.
Final question, in your opinion, would JFK Jr. have ever run for the presidency?
I think he would have, and I think Jackie expected him to. She said, you know, one of the notes she left for him at the time of her death was, you know, you especially have a place in history.
The presidential couple themselves lost a 2-day-old son just 3 months before John's assassination. While such bad luck may strike many families, the legend of a so-called Kennedy curse really began when Bobby Kennedy was assassinated during the early stages of his own presidential bid.
The idea of a possible curse occurred after Bobby Kennedy died, was killed 5 years after his brother. People thought, how is it possible that this family has suffered so much? Is there some curse?
We just want to update viewers on exactly what is going on. Right now we have the FAA, the Air National Guard, and the Coast Guard searching for the plane of John F. Kennedy Jr., a single-engine Piper Saratoga.
Continuing coverage of the breaking story, the search for an airplane carrying John F. Kennedy Jr.
Who was on board the plane with Kennedy and his wife. An aircraft headrest has also been found 200 yards off the coast.
He took off from a New Jersey airport last night, heading eventually for his cousin Rory's wedding at the family compound in Hyannisport, after stopping first in Martha's Vineyard.
It was 8:39 p.m. when he took off from the small airport in New Jersey. A little more than an hour later, when the Kennedy plane fails to show up at the Martha's Vineyard airport, relatives call the Coast Guard. Daybreak now, and search planes take to the air. And now air traffic controllers find evidence of an unidentified radar blip that disappeared during the night at 9:39 p.m. That last radar hit was about here, 17 miles off Martha's Vineyard, near Gay Head. At a point where John Kennedy's plane would have been descending into thick, heavy haze and preparing to turn either left or right to set up for the approach to runway 24 from this direction, dictated by prevailing winds. In the thick haze and the turn, could Kennedy have become confused? And this afternoon, the grim finds, wreckage washed to within 200 yards of shore off Gay Head. An eyewitness to one find, Chris Urbetta.
As it came in, we noticed that it was a piece of luggage, and a friend of mine who we were with pulled it in, and we lifted up a little Velcro name tag, and it turned out to be Lauren Bissett.
Lauren Bissett, Kennedy's sister-in-law, aboard the plane with Kennedy and Kennedy's wife, Carolyn, as it went down, or as it's presumed to have gone down. Tonight, authorities say they'll continue to search intensely for days, if need be.
At about 02:15 this morning, Coast Guard Operations Center at Group Woods Hole in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, received a telephone call from a family friend indicating that John F. Kennedy, his wife Carolyn Bissett, and his sister-in-law Lauren Bissett, who had earlier departed from Caldwell Airport in Fairfield, New Jersey, were late in arriving at Martha's Vineyard.
It was 8:39 p.m. when he took off from the small airport in New Jersey. A little more than an hour later, when the Kennedy plane fails to show up at the Martha's Vineyard airport.
At about 02:15 this morning, Coast Guard.
And I actually, when I got home, I said, to my family, I said, somebody's probably going to kill himself in the airplane. I hate to say it, but I mean, just taking off in that without low visibility over.
Would have been descending into thick, heavy haze and preparing to turn either left or right to set up for the approach to runway 24 from this direction, dictated by prevailing winds. In the thick haze and the turn, could Kennedy have become confused?
And I've said to people before that your weather can be very dicey off that island up there. From your point of view, what's the haze factor issue for a pilot?
It wasn't unusually hazy for here this time of year.
It was or was not?
It was not.
Right.
how long it took for the first planes to be out searching and what were they, and how this search differs from a search of somebody who isn't a celebrity?
Well, we treat all searches the same. There is no difference between celebrity or non-celebrity. Our job is for all the citizens of the United States. And I believe it was approximately 3 a.m. local time that we got the information from the FAA that the aircraft was overdue. They had received word from family members.
That last radar hit was about here, 17 miles off Martha's Vineyard, near Gay Head.
Reports, ABC is reporting that the plane possibly went into a dive about 19 miles off the coast of Martha's Vineyard.
But, Colonel, the radar signatures, we've heard a number of reports, as ABC mentioned.
ABC is reporting today that the plane possibly went into a dive about 19 miles off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. Does that mean the search will start focusing right there and you will pull away from, say, Long Island or other areas you're searching, or will you pretty much go about what you're doing?
We'll continue on the same track that we're on.
So what is this black box they always seem to be looking for? Now, the black box is very often actually split in two black boxes, which will help the investigators to determine what and how it led to the accident. Each box roughly weighs sort of 20 pounds and each have the size of a shoebox. One of them is the CVR, the Cockpit Voice Recorder. Now picture a classic tape recorder with 4 microphone cables attached to it. One leading into the radio control panels to record any communication between the pilots and the air traffic controllers, one recording all conversations via the intercom within the cockpit, and another one leading to the overhead panel microphone, recording like ambient sounds of the cockpit, such as engine sounds and aural warnings. When does it and how much does it record? It automatically starts recording in flight and on ground when at least one engine is running and for a few minutes after the last engine was shut down. The other recorder, or the second black box, is the flight data recorder. Now the flight data recorder, also known as the ADR, the accident data recorder, records data at a much larger scale than the CVR. Now the FAA regulates that the FDR must monitor at least 88 important parameters such as altitude, airspeed, heading, aircraft attitude for a minimum of 25 hours. Nowadays, FDRs made by Honeywell, for instance, can record up to 1,000 in-flight parameters and characteristics such as the flap position, the autopilot modes, weather radar readouts, and much, much more to aid the investigators. Now this then allows the retrieved data from the FDR to generate a computer animated video reconstructing the flight before and during the crash, which then can look very similar to this animation. So the combination of the visual part by the FDR and the audio by the CVR enables a realistic picture for investigators. So with the collected data from both recorders, the investigators then determine whether an accident was caused by a pilot error, by an external event such as a wind shear, for example, or an airplane technical failure. Why is it often placed near the tail of the airplane? If you look at airplane crash investigation footage, you very often see the tail cone and the rudder intact compared to the rest of the wreckage. Why is that so? Now, the after section of the plane is structurally much stronger than other parts of the plane as the metal panels all come together, needing overall more stringers and framing, which stiffens the tail cone section. Therefore, my German physicist has come up with a great experience using a water bottle to show you the stiffness of the airplane's tail cone. Now, we are imagining that the glass bottle is our airplane, with the bottleneck being the tail cone section of the airplane. Due to the manufacturing process of the glass bottle, the bottleneck is thicker due to its narrow diameter, making it stronger than the rest of the bottle and remains intact after applying force to it, similar to the tail cone after a crash landing. So it makes sense to place the black box back here then, right? Well, by just placing it here won't make it unbreakable. That's why the recorders are in a box wrapped in strong corrosion-resistant stainless steel or titanium, giving it an impact tolerance of 3,400 Gs. And with a high temperature insulation, it can resist 1,100 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. But even more important is this little tube you see at the side of most FDRs. Now, this is the underwater locator beacon that emits an ultrasonic ping every second to aid in detection when submerged underwater. Now, these beacons operate or transmit on a 37.5 kHz frequency for up to a minimum of 30 days and are able to operate while immersed to a depth of up to 20,000 feet.
Are you hearing those reports at all about 19 miles off Martha's Vineyard? The radar.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The radar indicated that at some point that the plane may have gone into a dive.
This radar analysis is part of the NTSB report. It's buried at page 321 of the report, but it's one of the most basic and important pieces of the evidence in any investigation. Any newshound who wanted to could have gotten a look at it. This line shows the tail end of the plane's very gradual descent from 5,500 to 2,200 feet. Kennedy had not yet contacted the tower at this point, and FAA regulations require that you contact the tower before descending below 2,500 feet. So, being the meticulous pilot that he was, John brought the plane back up to 2,500 feet and contacted the tower. We don't know how long that conversation lasted, but if it lasted 1 minute, as soon as it was over, the plane began a catastrophic plunge into the sea. The conclusion seems obvious, doesn't it? It doesn't seem to matter what view you look at, south to north or east to west. It does not appear to be an accidental crash.
An engine failure. As a pilot, you're trained on what to do, but still you may not be ready if the time comes. When it happens, a real-world engine out is likely to catch you off guard. You're thinking to yourself, this can't be real, can it? Engine failures are rare, but when one happens, you should be ready. Going beyond rote memorization, you should develop a strategy to be spring-loaded for an engine failure in any situation at any altitude. First of all, don't panic. Fly the airplane and pitch and trim for best glide. Don't worry about pinning the speed exactly. Just go to the nearest 5 knots and run a quick mental checklist to keep the airplane under control. Did you do something that caused the engine to quit? Undo it. How high or low are you above the Earth? In this chart, you can see that altitude equals both distance and distance and time equal options. Here are 2 good rules of thumb for most GA aircraft. 1,000 feet gets you 1.5 miles of gliding distance, and multiply your altitude by 2 to figure out how much time you have. In this example with a Cessna 172 and a 9:1 glide ratio, at 4,000 feet, you'll glide about 6 miles and take around 8 minutes to descend. Another good, make sure you and your passengers are buckled in with seatbelts and shoulder harnesses and are bracing for impact. A folded jacket in front of the face and body can soften a forward jolt during landing. Front seat passengers should push their seats back as far as possible. After you make your last configuration changes on short final, turn off the master and alternator to reduce the risk of a fire. Once the airplane stops, evacuate and make sure everyone is safe. Accident data shows that higher than 90% of off-airport landings are survivable, so the odds of success are in your favor.
the tower. We don't know how long that conversation lasted, but if it lasted 1 minute, as soon as it was over, the plane began a catastrophic plunge into the sea.
Here are 2 good rules of thumb for most GA aircraft. 1,000 feet gets you 1.5 miles of gliding distance, and multiply your altitude by 2 to figure out how much time you have. In this example with a Cessna 172 and a 9-to-1 glide ratio, at 4,000 feet, you'll glide about 6 miles and take around 8 minutes to descend. Another good rule of thumb to remember is GAS. Assuming nothing else is wrong, if you have gas in your tanks, air going to the engine, and spark from your ignition system, the engine should run. Some quick troubleshooting can often get an engine running again. If time allows, go through the restart checklist, squawk 7700, and declare an emergency on 121.5 or with ATC if you're already talking to them. Keep in mind that not all engine failures are an abrupt full-stop deal. There may be cases where you lose partial power or have engine surges from carb ice, improper mixture, ignition problems, or early stages of fuel starvation. Sometimes all you have to do is turn the fuel pump on or switch tanks. The engine out checklist can be useful, but if there's not enough time, just fly the airplane and remember the GAS checklist. If you've done your troubleshooting and still the engine remains silent, you are now committed to landing. Close the throttle to avoid it suddenly springing to life when you're near the ground. It's okay to be nervous. The bottom line is to focus on landing the airplane safely. If you have enough time and altitude, call up ATC or use your GPS and moving map while scanning ahead, behind, below, and off the sides to find a suitable airport. But if one's not in reach, rural roads and smooth grassy fields can usually provide a safe alternate. A highway's grassy median strip could also work, but you have to watch out for traffic, power lines, overpasses, and road signs. Above a forest, fly the airplane under slowest possible speed right into the treetops to cushion the landing. The goal is to keep the cabin intact, helping your chances of survival. Over water, you'll have to interpret winds, swells, and currents. Land parallel to the swells and keep the yoke all the way back to reduce chances of flipping over. Once you pick a spot, stick with it. Wherever you choose to land, don't lift the nose to gain altitude or stretch the glide. This is only going to accelerate the descent and increase your chances of a stall or spin. Remember, pitching for the nearest 5 knots of best glide speed will give you the greatest distance with the least amount of drag. Landing in a soft field with gear up can prevent you from nosing over, especially on water landings. On the other hand, gear down can help absorb the impact from rough terrain. Flaps will help you lose altitude and give you the slowest touchdown speed, but they add drag, so you're going to lose gliding distance, and that could cause you to come up short. Side slipping on final might be a good alternative, but that means you'll be going faster at touchdown than you would with flaps. Consider dumping the flaps at the last moment to help slow down as much as possible. Make sure you and your passengers are buckled in with seatbelts and shoulder harnesses and are bracing for impact. A folded jacket in front of the face and body can soften a forward jolt during landing. Front seat passengers should push their seats back as far as possible. After you make your last configuration changes on short final, turn off the master and alternator to reduce the risk of a fire. Once the airplane stops, evacuate and make sure everyone is safe. Accident data shows that higher than 90% of off-airport landings are survivable, so the odds of success are in your favor.
Thunderbird, squawk 7004.
Combustion ramjet, or scramjet, is a good candidate to propel future high-speed airplanes or spaceplanes.
Cruise missiles and bombs are so 90s. We've got far cooler stuff for the military to fling at our enemies now. I want to take a look at this tweet that had some interesting information in it. So Nick Waters had said, so he investigates these sort of things, says, I remember puzzling over these cuts. You can see images of a vehicle there. The roof is caved in, but there's also branching off in 4 directions, interesting cuts in the actual metal. And there was one of the leaders of Al-Qaeda at that point had been killed in this strike. He says, turns out it was a Hellfire missile with swords attached to it, which sounds cool. Ridiculous, but now we know that it is in fact true. Say hello to the R9X. If you take a look at this, you're gonna see it's a missile, almost the size of a man, and blades spring out of it like Wolverine in missile form. And they say that there's no explosive, by the way, so it just hits with obviously blunt force, its weight and all that, but also blades, with the idea being that it will be less likely to damage people other than the target that you're planning to attack. And
I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on blades.
It's
like ninja swords, because I was saying like this is what you tinker with or imagine that you're tinkering with after watching a great movie and like make your own missile. But I'm like, no, this is actually really how the US government is spending money.
According to a report by the Wall Street Journal, the Central Intelligence Agency and US Department of Defense have developed a missile called Hellfire R9X designed to carry out precision strikes while minimizing collateral damage. The Hellfire R9X missile carries a payload of over 100 pounds of metal and 6 blades that spread before impact instead of an explosive warhead. Other Hellfire models carry explosives and can injure or kill any individual within its blast radius. The journal reports that the Hellfire R9X has been used roughly 6 times in different attacks in Libya, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and Somalia. The R9X was also used on February 26th of 2017, where it targeted and killed Al-Qaeda deputy leader Abu al-Khair al-Masri during an attack in Syria. Photographs show al-Masri's car with a hole in its roof and a broken windshield, but no severe collateral damage in the surrounding area.